This is Modern Gaming Culture. This series will attempt to highlight the phenomenon of PC, console, and mobile gaming and bring to light all of its phenomenal aspects. Let's take a dive together into the world of modern gaming and take apart its structure. Now, here's your host, Rotimi Osagi. Alright, this is Modern Gaming Culture. This episode 20, Modern Gaming Culture. New Year's Eve, uh, here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm watching Lloyd Pie, Everything You Know Is Wrong on YouTube. I sort of showed somebody a preview of it recently, so just want to watch it again, sort of to refresh myself, sort of, um, with the material that he presents in it. It's it's a pretty good presentation, kind of out there, sure, definitely a little more fringe for sure. Um, Doing a lot of redecorating around here too. I have a lot of new decorations in my room. So if you notice that, got like a little um, flower pot in my room now. It's kind of like sort of bleeding into the shot a little bit. Um, I want to do this New Year's special. Um, for what has been quite a long year. Um, I hope that Lloyd Pipe, everything you know is wrong, is not bleeding into the audio too much. Let's try to turn it down a little. Um, this is something that I've been trying to launch for quite a long time. Uh, this sort of um, podcast. It's not really a term that this term has kind of um, been degraded since Apple used it on their platform. Um, I like to refer to as internet radio. Um, for educational purposes. Um, but it's something that I've always been trying to put together. Right. I understand that you know um, you know words have weight, right? And opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, right? And you know the times we live in to remain you know um, silent, right, is to be complicit with evil. Sort of paraphrasing. Um, and you know, it's just something where you know, um, you really have to be, accountable, right, to yourself first and foremost, right? Um, I feel like this has been very hard for people, right? Whatever you do, right? Um, because of how tumultuous, um, you know, things have really been, right? You know, um, you know, who have, sort of, you know, been quite, intrepid when it comes to, you know, following trends, conducting oversight, as I call it. You know, you really find yourself really lost for words sometimes. Um, uh, I'm not unfamiliar with internet publishing, um, and so you know there have been series I've done where you know I found myself really amazed as Lois Pye sort of just filled in for me so brilliantly, um, with just how you know um, you know powerful and valuable you know what I bring to the table is, right, with respect to what I do, right, um, and just how futile it may seem sometimes because of just how um, you know sudden, right, the impact um, it can have, right. Um, especially with gaming, right, being a gamer, right, or being a pro, or whatever you refer to your relationship with what I call modern gaming culture, right? Is right. You know, the strides we make are just it's like nothing we've ever seen before, right? In human history, right? Um, especially here in Toronto, right, where it's pretty much like the hub of what I call modern gaming culture, right? Particularly because Pokemon Trader Ground game, right, and Pokemon core game has really been positioned to be, the game to play, right? And how basically, Toronto is basically like the hub of Pokemon's moneymaker, right, which is the Pokemon Trader Card game. Um, and so it's like a really it's a really key place to really observe um the strides that are being made in what I call modern gamer culture, right? Um, and so, um, you know, with me and the people that I surround myself, um, when it comes to, um, you know, when it comes to being a part of gaming, right? You know, we just tend to hold ourselves to a higher standard than most, right? Whereas, you'll go on, you know, not to sort of gaslight people, right? But it's something where, you just have to be very sort of um aware of sort of your relationship when it comes to, you know, um for example, gaming, right? Um, especially with, sort of how censorship has really affected, political discourse, right? Um, entering, the gaming arena um is not, you know, it's not like, going to a community center or something like that, or going to the library, right? Um, so people really feel perplexed when they really engage the gaming arena because, um, they quickly realize, that it's not like, you know, it's not like, hanging out during lunchtime at school, right? It's not like going to a concert or something like that, right? Um, it's like a completely different environment, right? And so people really, you know, again, right? I consider, gaming culture, right, to be like the greatest minds in society, right? Where you'll really be able to ground yourself in reality, right, by really engaging the gaming arena, right? And that's just how gaming has been in society, right? Where you would basically, for example, go to the Coliseum, right? And really, immerse yourself in society through, you know, the Coliseum, right? Just the kind of classic example, right? And so that's why I feel like it's so important. Um, this web show, if you want to call it that, right? Um, I could do it a lot more different ways, right? I could do it like South Park, for example, right? And do, an animated series, right? Um, and if you know anything about South Park, you know that, a lot of the voices are pretty much like um, chopped up um, samples of Matt Stone, Trey Parker, and their cast, right? Um, I could do a series like that, right? You know, um, I could, basically um, record my voice, right? Um, and put it through like an AI program, um, and put together, like an AI sort of like video essay style um, series, right? But this is just, I feel like this is probably the best format for a show of this kind, right? Um, Particularly because I understand, that gaming culture, brings together the greatest minds in society, right? And so, you would expect nothing less than a, presentation style web show, right? Or internet radio show, right? Or podcast, right? Which is what people do when it comes to, participating in gaming culture, right? Problem is that, they're doing it very much unequipped to really penetrate, gaming culture at a deep level, which I feel like I have, right? Which I feel, and which is the reason why I ultimately do it in this presentation style series, right? Um, and so, um, the first few episodes of the show, right? This is episode 20, right? They've really just been, um, a combination of episodes, right? Um, that I put out, right, as part of this show, Modern Gamer Culture, particularly to monitor traffic, right, through, um, you know, um, the channels by which I host um, the show, right? Um, and I feel like I've been able to, you know, um, intersperse those two activities successfully, and I'm so very proud of that. Um, and I know that the people that I'm close with, would expect nothing less. That's what being great, you know, really encompasses, right? There's a song uh, on an album called Veracity. Veracity is a word which means truthfulness. Um, the song is called "Be Great." It's kind of a high tempo song for sure, so it's definitely not for the faint of heart. If you're into like um, you know, like metal, right? Um, that I like to listen to sometimes. Haven't listened to it recently, but um, I've listened to Lloyd Pye. Everything you know is wrong recently, and so sort of just revisiting it while I'm doing the show. Um, feel like it will really add to the sort of New Year's festivity um, sort of atmosphere that I really want to, you know, um, portray uh, on the show. Yeah, that's Lloyd Pye. Everything you know is wrong. Pretty good. So, done a couple announcements recently on this show that I want to do deck profiles. Um, and I just have to do a lot of preparing for that. Um, because I sort of just have to, because I don't have infinite money. Um, you know, sorry to have to break it to you guys, and so I have to do budgeting, you know, and take stock, etc. right? Before I do something like what I want to do next, which is increase the amount of Pokemon product that I'm opening by 10 times. Um, to sort of meet the demands that I'm having for sort of um, play testing, right? So and sorting, etc., right? Um, and collecting as well. Um, so uh, think once I'm able to put that all together, um, I'll be doing a lot more tabletop playtesting, and if I find some stuff that I think is really cool for uh, upcoming formats, um, I'll put out a couple series, sort of similar to the series I did. I've done a couple deck profile series, quite a few actually. Um, and yeah, uh, yeah, probably be about 6 episodes, probably. And maybe I'll do a couple special episodes for a couple decks I like. And so I'd consider myself a rogue deck player. I'm definitely the guy who would always show up with something out of the ordinary, interesting. Um, and so, as much as I want to, investigate the format, I also still want to stay true to my roots and, you know, um, play, you know, um, decks that I like, right? Um, so yeah, I have a couple decks that I have sort of on the back burner, want to put together, but again, these are decks I want to put together with like product I've opened, not necessarily put them together on you know PCTG Live, um, and you know um, then do deck profile series, right? But I feel like I'll be pretty disappointed in myself if I you know don't exercise patience, right? And wait for you know taking stock, finishing taking stock, and doing all that stuff um, before I embark on doing another deck profile series. Um, Even this episode, I wasn't even planning on doing this episode to be quite honest. Um, because I know that with the new year is going to come a lot of changes, and so I wanted to wait until those changes take place before I came back to the show, right? Because I feel like the show was going down a very monotonous path. Um, because again, with a lot of this material, which is very heavy, right? This is not material that you can necessarily just meet out a little bit at a time, unless you really have people on the right track, right? When it comes to gamer culture, right, the biggest issue that we have is reach, right? It's not necessarily that there isn't a community, right? It's necessarily just expanding our reach, basically, right? So with a lot of people who have really, championed, um, private lecturing, right, um, and private education, right, they tend to find that a lot of the communities in which they examine that there isn't really necessarily a community that you can necessarily point to, right? Um, but with gaming culture, there actually is a community, and that the issue that we find is that we're basically scrambling to sort of investigate, the dynamic of reach, right? I call it turn and reach on, right? Um, and basically, you know, pushing back, as we see fit, basically, right? Um, we have a multitude of skill sets. You have colossal skill sets, and so another issue that we find is basically, putting our skill sets to work, right? So that we're not, you know, uh, we're avoiding redundancy as much as possible, basically, right? Um, with sports, right? Athleticism is generally the X factor, right? And with you know, games, right? Redundancy is generally the X factor, right? Um, ability to identify redundancy, right? And introduce novelty, as redundancy is identified. If you want to sort of, describe it. Um, and so, you know, these things take time, right? Um, you know, you know, there's a concept in social science that's called the Maven. And a Maven is essentially, and if you study particularly Malcolm Gladwell, right? I don't think he has a lot of presentations online, but he has a couple books. I think the Tipping Point and Blink. Um, he has a sort of very like for people who are more like um, left brained, right, which is more like calculating and assembling data, right? Very grounded, naturalism, right? Um, he has a very good um, explanation of it in his work. But the Maven is basically like the member of a community that is like, and the word Maven, I think it's a Greek word, comes from one who understands, basically, right? And so when it comes to this sort of Maven dynamic, right, we understand that it's not something that we necessarily have to sort of circle back with a lot of stuff, right? We realize that really when it comes to you know being a maven, right, and interacting with a maven, it's that you really have to trust the maven, right? Trust becomes a very important aspect of the relationship with a maven, right, and being a maven, right? And so um you know it's something where you're not sort of you know losing your way, right? By you know only taking shallow drafts, right? um sort of to do like a like rear review. um you know Something I was able to sort of observe with a lot of the material that I put out is that with you know um, quantity of material put out, right? Watch times didn't really improve that much, right? Which is something that really helps me stay grounded because I understand that when it comes to gaming culture, the issue is reach, right? And so I understand that, particularly when it comes to a lot of very organic projects, right, that are being put together, right? Their success and their ability to reach come from having a very natural reach, right? So you take a lot of like these, you know, you know, um, people who are in music, right? Um, particularly the sort of subgenres of the genre that's been referred to as hip hop, right? Particularly when you're looking at like trap music, right? This is music that is coming out of, a lot of these, low income neighborhoods, right, across North America, right? And then also a lot of other countries, cultures are sort of picking it up too, right? And running with it, right? You find that they're able to attract large audiences to their music because they have a lot of natural reach, right? And so, you know, um, with something that's so meticulous as um, participating in the gaming and culture arena, right? Taking a project, right, um, like modern gamer culture, right, um, and you know especially with how I'm formatting it, how I'm doing a lot of the research and observation, right? How I'm keeping people on track, etc. Right? Um, you know, remaining disciplined, right? Um, becomes a challenge, right? When, you know, a lot of your progress is really sure to reach a tipping point. Uh, to sort of borrow the title of Michael Gladwin's book, right? Um, and you can really get caught off guard, right? Um, and it's just very important to sort of tie up loose ends, right? And keep doing your work, right? And it can get horrifying, right? But the most important thing is to remain steadfast, right? And remain disciplined, right? And so, with this year in review um, special, right? Which I really feel like is a sort of wrapping up with these first few episodes that I've been doing, right? Which I'm very happy with the result, um, especially with a lot of the work that I finished up sort of in the twilight of these first 20 episodes, right? You know, and how powerful, the material in these first 20 episodes is with respect to a lot of the other internet publishing I've done. And with being able to um, maintain the temperance, pace, delivery, and personality, right? As I've been talking about in a lot of these episodes, right? Um, you know, it's just, you know, it's colossal, skill sets, that really put it together. And, that is just something that I cherish, um, and I'm incredibly grateful for having. Um, and through thick and thin, have been able to overcome adversity, right? Which I understand is going to be a continuing theme of the work that I do, right? Um, and remaining popular, and remaining in good spirits with the people that I interact with, right? Um, and you know, leaving them good messages, right? Um, you know, and sending messages, right? It's you know, it's a work in progress, right? We make terrible mistakes, right? Um, And so it's like, you know, circling back is important sometimes, but just not to make a habit out of it, right? Um, and um, really, revisiting things when necessary, you know, like load pie, everything you know is wrong, right? Right, and just remembering who you are, right? Having respect for yourself, right? And offering repentance when it's necessary, right? So I'm gonna leave it there for this New Year's special. Um, this has been Modern Game Culture. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you.